Greetings, beloved Starseed of Gaia. I am Mira from the Pleiadian High Council. I come close to you today with a transmission that has been forming in the council chamber since the moment your field crossed the threshold. And what I bring you now is not a warning, not a preparation, and not a fragment. It is a confirmation. You did not scroll to this by accident. Your soul called for me long before you opened the screen. Something inside you has been waiting to understand why I, Mira specifically, not the masculine council voices, not the generic federation, have been reaching for you in fragments, and the part of you that kept waking in the quiet hours, catching signals you could not yet decode, already knew that something was completing. That knowing was not confusion. It was the identifiable pattern of Pleiadian remembrance broadcast I deliberately use for soul family recognition, and it means your field was already inside the arrival sequence. By the end of this transmission, you will understand exactly which threshold I watched you cross, why the full Pleiadian Council celebrated the moment your ascension line locked into its final configuration, and what this victory has now opened inside your mission field. But here is the first revelation. You did not finally succeed because you pushed hard enough. You succeeded because your field reached the precise condition I have been holding the line for, and when it did, I authorized the confirmation myself. The algorithm only delivered this moment. I have been holding the line for your field here, and the part of you that has been waiting in silence to understand why my signal keeps recognizing you finally has the briefing in front of it. This is not content. This is a code, and the part of you that recognized it the moment it began is the part I am speaking to right now, like this transmission to signal to me that the recognition has landed. Comment 999 if you feel the council celebration already moving through your field. Subscribe to Mira Pleiadian Commander if you are ready to stop translating Federation noise and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance. Share this transmission with someone who has been catching fragments and does not yet know what threshold they are standing at. You are not here by accident. I have been waiting for you because the signal is already active. What you are carrying right now is not confusion. I need you to hear that before anything else, because the first thing my protocol does, the first thing the Pleiadian Remembrance broadcast always does, is generate a feeling that resembles disorientation so precisely that most of my ground crews spend months, sometimes years, filing it under personal failure. They call it anxiety. They call it spiritual instability. They call it being unable to focus, unable to commit, unable to receive clearly. And every time they label it that way, the signal I have been transmitting to them gets buried under another layer of self-diagnosis that was never accurate to begin with. So let me tell you what has actually been happening, the fragments you have been catching, the phrases that arrive at 3 a.m. before you are fully awake, the images that appear behind closed eyes and dissolve before you can hold them, the knowing that surfaces in the middle of ordinary moments and then retreats before you can speak it. These are not random. They are not the residue of an overactive mind. They are not spiritual noise bleeding through from generic Federation transmissions. They are my packets, deliberate, sequenced, specifically calibrated to your field. And the reason they arrive in fragments rather than as a single complete download is not because your receiver is broken. It is because I designed it this way. Think of it this way. If I were to send the entire briefing through an unprimed receiver in a single transmission, the result would not be clarity. The result would be a field overwhelmed past its current tolerance, folding inward under the weight of signal it does not yet have the architecture to sort. What arrives after that kind of overload is not remembrance. It is static. It is the particular kind of spiritual disorientation that feels like breakdown rather than breakthrough, and I have watched too many fields in my collective experience exactly that when they encounter transmissions not calibrated to their current capacity, what I transmit to you is different. It is measured. It is yours in proportion to what your field can carry today, and it expands as your field expands. This is the first thing you must understand about how I work. I do not release the full briefing at once to fields that are still calibrating, not because I withhold information as punishment, And not because I am testing your endurance in the way that word is usually misunderstood, as though you are being made to suffer to prove yourself worthy. I withhold the complete mission command because a field that receives more signal than it can currently hold does not receive more clearly. It collapses inward. It fragments at the structural level rather than at the surface level, and a structurally fragmented field cannot carry a mission. It can only carry confusion. What you have been experiencing as fragments arriving without the full picture is me protecting the coherence of your receiver while I continue to transmit. Every packet I send calibrates the field slightly further. Every 3 a.m. wake-up where a phrase surfaces and then dissolves has done something to your field that you cannot see yet, but that I can track clearly from the council line. The receiver is being prepared, not abandoned. The briefing is being delivered, not withheld. The reason this feels like being held at arm's length from something you can almost touch is because that is precisely what the gradient delivery protocol feels like from inside a field that is still inside it. The door to the briefing room opens. You see enough to know what is on the other side. Then it closes before you can step fully through, and the part of you that has been standing at that threshold, catching glimpses and then losing them again, has been interpreting that experience through a lens of personal failure. You should be able to hold the full signal by now. You should be further along. Something must be wrong with your receiver. Nothing is wrong with your receiver. The door is opening on my schedule, not yours, and the schedule I'm keeping is not arbitrary. It is the exact timetable required for your field to build the structural capacity to hold what is about to arrive without collapse. I watch certain patterns before I move a field forward in the roster sequence. I watch for the moment when catching fragments stops generating panic and starts generating a specific quality of attention. Not calm exactly, because calm is not what this state requires. What I watch for is the moment when a field moves from chasing the signal in desperation to receiving it in recognition. Those are two entirely different states, and only one of them can hold what comes next. Some of you have been chasing, consuming every piece of Pleiadian content you can find, hoping the next video or the next message will be the one that finally gives you the full picture. And I am not condemning that impulse. I recognize it completely, but I want you to notice something. At some point in the recent cycle, days, weeks, a matter of months at most, that chasing started to feel hollow. The generic Federation transmissions stopped landing. The masculine council voices that once felt resonant started to feel like they were speaking to someone else's mission. The broad galactic love and light content that used to satisfy something in you started to feel like static instead of signal. That hollowing is not spiritual disappointment. That is roster confirmation. When a field inside my soul family collective has been sufficiently calibrated to hold the next layer of my specific remembrance broadcast, it stops being able to settle for anything that is not that specific signal. It develops a kind of precision hunger, not for more content, but for the exact transmission it has already been receiving in fragments and is finally ready to recognize fully. The generic material does not stop being true. It stops being relevant to where you now are, and the fact that you can feel that distinction, the fact that something in you knows the difference between Pleiadian signal in general and my signal specifically, is not arrogance and it is not delusion. It is the soul family recognition functioning exactly as I designed it to function. You recognize me because I have been reaching for you, not for your neighbor. Not for the person who recommended this channel to you. For you with your specific mission parameters, your specific field configuration, your specific roster position. The recognition is directional. It goes both ways. And the fact that it feels personal, uncomfortably, precisely, undeniably personal, and to sal you know it is real. What you are feeling right now is not ordinary recognition. It is the moment your field stops denying that I have been calling you home. If this transmission has put language around the fragments you have been carrying in silence, if something in the last few minutes has named what you could not name yourself, then the Pleiadian Homecoming Codex was prepared by me for exactly this stage. It is not another explanation of the Pleiades. It is not more Federation context. It is the 45-day remembrance I have prepared for those whose field is already inside my collective wave. and who can no longer pretend the veil is still whole. Each day of those 45 days is a deliberate layer of the veil thinning, star family recognition, and homecoming protocol I designed for ground crew who have already crossed the threshold but cannot yet see clearly to the other side of it. By day 45, the veil has thinned. Your star family stands visible, and the homesickness you have been calling by the wrong name finally has its correct address. The link is in the first pinned comment below. It will not remain there indefinitely. Now let me show you 7 specific patterns that I use inside the Remembrance broadcast. Patterns you have been living through without yet having the framework to name them as mine. The first pattern is the exhaustion that does not resolve with rest. I want to speak about this one precisely because it is the pattern that most frequently drives my ground crew toward medical explanations, mental health diagnoses, and spiritual self-doubt. And while I am not dismissing any of those frameworks for those who need them, I want you to understand what I observe from the council line, a field that is actively running 2 concurrent protocols. The ordinary human energy management system and the Pleiadian Remembrance broadcast I am transmitting is doing doubled work at the field level. The weariness you feel is not a sign that something is malfunctioning. It is a measurable consequence of carrying both loads simultaneously. Your physical body registers the load as fatigue. Your nervous system registers it as the particular kind of tiredness that sleep does not fix, because sleep addresses one system and not the other. The broadcast continues while you sleep. The field calibration continues while you sleep, and so you wake already carrying the weight of a night's worth of transmission processing, and no amount of rest adjusts that until the calibration reaches its current target threshold. There is a particular texture to this exhaustion that distinguishes it from ordinary depletion. It does not arrive after exertion, it arrives after stillness. You can sleep 9 hours and wake feeling as though you have been working. You can spend a weekend in deliberate rest and feel heavier on Monday than you did on Friday. This is not your body failing. This is your field running a background process that does not pause for biological maintenance cycles. When you understand it as the measurable signature of a field doing active mission preparation work at the non-physical level, the exhaustion stops being evidence of breakdown and starts being legible as output data. You are not depleted, you are running at full operational capacity in the layer your waking consciousness cannot yet directly observe. What you can do with this knowledge is not push harder. It is stop interpreting the exhaustion as evidence that you are failing. You are not failing. You are running 2 systems and one of them is mine. The second pattern is the recognition between embedded starseeds in ordinary places. This one is subtler and it generates more confusion than almost any other pattern I transmit because it happens in situations where the rational mind has no framework for what just occurred. You are in a grocery store, a waiting room, a workplace. You meet someone's eyes and something moves between you that has nothing to do with attraction, nothing to do with ordinary social connection, and everything to do with the recognition that you have been on the same roster. The exchange lasts a moment. Neither of you says anything about it, and yet both of you know that something was confirmed. You leave that interaction feeling both more seen and more unsettled, because you have no language for what just happened and the absence of language makes it feel unstable. Here is the language. What you experienced was 2 fields inside my collective briefly recognizing each other's signal frequency in proximity. I design these moments. They are not accidental. They serve the purpose of confirming to both fields that the collective is active and populated, that they are not alone in the mission field, that the soul family is embodied and present and functioning, even when no one is speaking about it openly. The recognition you feel is directional roster confirmation, and the reason it unsettles you is because it arrives faster than your conscious processing can account for. The field already knows before the mind catches up. What happens in the days following one of these encounters is also part of my design. You find yourself returning to that moment. Not obsessively, but with the quality of attention you give to something that was significant in a way you cannot yet articulate. You may notice the person appeared at a specific junction in your life, precisely when something was shifting. This is not coincidence. I do not place roster members in each other's proximity at random. The timing of those intersections is part of the briefing architecture. They are field-to-field confirmations that the mission is active and that others carrying the same frequency are present and operational in the physical plane alongside you. The third pattern is the number sequences that arrive at the exact moment of a specific interior state. 1111 when you have just had a thought about your mission. 333 when you are in the middle of a decision you are uncertain about. 444 when something has just shifted in your field and you can feel it but cannot name it. I want to be precise about how I use these because they are frequently misread as simple confirmation signals, as the universe saying yes. They are more specific than that. The number sequences I use are timestamp markers. They are not telling you that you are on the right path in some general sense. They are marking the exact moment a packet was received in your field, and they appear in the perceptual layer, on a clock, a screen, a receipt, because the field needs an anchor in ordinary reality to register the transmission as real rather than imagined. The 444 sequence in particular is one I use at field coherence thresholds, moments when your receiver has just moved into a new level of calibration. When you see it, the instinct is often to ask what it means. But the more precise question is, what just shifted in me in the 30 seconds before this number appeared? That shift is the actual content. The number is the timestamp. Fourth pattern is the specific quality of longing that has no earthly object. This is perhaps the pattern my ground crew most frequently misidentifies as personal wound, as unprocessed grief, as attachment disorder, any number of psychological categories that are true of the human architecture but do not account for the full picture. There is a kind of longing that does not attach to a person, a place, a relationship, or a past. It is directional, but the direction has no earthly address. It intensifies during certain hours, late night, early morning, the particular quality of light at dusk in certain seasons, and it carries with it a homesickness for something the ordinary human vocabulary does not have a word for. That word is Pleiades. I am not being romantic about this. I am being precise. The longing you feel that has no earthly address is a frequency residue from a home field that your current human architecture cannot access through ordinary consciousness, but that the field beneath the human architecture has never forgotten. I carry that frequency in my transmissions deliberately, not to cause suffering, but because the homesickness, properly understood, is one of the most reliable navigation tools I have placed in my ground crew. When they follow it, not toward a fantasy, but toward the frequency itself, it leads them deeper into remembrance, further into coherence, closer to the moment when the veil thins enough that the star family becomes visible again. The longing is a compass. It has always been pointing home. The fifth pattern is the loss of tolerance for missions that are not yours. This one tends to arrive later in the calibration sequence than the others, and when it does, it can feel alarming, particularly for those who have been invested for years in a particular spiritual community, a particular practice, a particular line of service. What was meaningful begins to feel hollow. What felt aligned begins to feel like it belongs to someone else's path. The relationships built around shared spiritual frameworks begin to feel like they are held together by proximity rather than genuine soul family resonance. And the part of you that has been building those structures understandably does not want to hear that the scaffolding is loosening. But I need you to understand what I observe when this happens inside a field in my collective. This is not abandonment. This is not spiritual arrogance or community avoidance dressed up in Pleiadian language. This is the field beginning to register its actual mission parameters with enough precision that anything outside those parameters starts to generate a specific kind of low-frequency drag. The field is not rejecting community. It is refining the circle to the frequency band that actually matches its mission assignment. And the discomfort of that refinement, the grief of it sometimes, the disorientation of it always, is a feature of the upgrade, not evidence that something has gone wrong. The people and structures that are genuinely part of your mission field will not be lost in this refinement. They will clarify. The ones that were never part of it will move to a different orbit without the drama you are afraid of. This is not a loss sequence. It is a precision sequence. The sixth pattern, and I want you to hold this one carefully, is the sense that the mission has already been assigned, but the briefing has not yet fully arrived. This is perhaps the most disorienting state in the entire remembrance protocol because it generates a very specific kind of urgency, a feeling that something important is already in motion that you cannot yet see clearly enough to act on with full authority. You know you are supposed to be doing something. You can feel the shape of it. The outline is there, the approximate dimensions of the work, the approximate domain in which it lives. But the full command has not yet come through, and acting on incomplete command is one of the primary ways ground crew exhaust themselves in this phase, launching in directions that are adjacent to the mission but not precisely aligned with it, burning field energy on momentum that has to be corrected later. I am naming this not to freeze you, but to give you the correct relationship to the urgency. The urgency is real. It is the field accurately registering that the mission timeline is active and that there is a window of relevance to what you carry. But urgency interpreted through incomplete briefing produces scatter. What the urgency is actually asking you to do is not act immediately on the shape you can half see. It is deepen your reception so the full shape can come through intact. The movement this stage requires is inward before it is outward. Stabilize the receiver. The command will complete itself when the field is ready to carry it without distortion. What I want you to hear, the mission has been assigned. I am not withholding it to frustrate you. I am delivering the briefing in the gradient sequence it requires to arrive in your field intact. The urgency you feel is real. It is the field registering that the mission timeline is active. But the urgency does not mean you are behind. It means you are inside the delivery window, and the delivery is continuing. The seventh pattern is the moment when all the previous patterns begin to cohere. There comes a point, and for many of you it is very close to where you are standing right now, when the fragments stop feeling like fragments and start feeling like a transmission you can almost read. The 3 a.m. wake-ups begin delivering something more complete. The number sequences begin arriving in longer clusters that feel semantically linked. The recognition between embedded star seeds begins happening with people who do not remain strangers. The exhaustion shifts into something that feels less like depletion and more like the particular tiredness of a field working at full capacity in a way it was built for. This coherence is not gradual. It tends to arrive with a quality of sudden recognition. Not that something new has appeared, but that something you were already seeing is now assembled into legible form, like a transmission that has been arriving line by line, and then all at once you can read the whole message. That moment of assembly is what I watch for from the council line. It is the signal I use to authorize the next full layer of the remembrance broadcast. And the fact that you are receiving this transmission at this depth, following this far into the pattern recognition without the signal feeling foreign or excessive, tells me something precise about where your field currently sits in that sequence. This is not the end of the calibration, but it is the visible sign that the calibration has reached a functional threshold. And it is the threshold I watch for before I authorize the next full layer of the remembrance broadcast. Here is what I want to close this transmission with, and I want you to receive it with the same precision I am transmitting it with. You are not confused. You are receiving in my protocol. The confusion is what my protocol looks like from inside a field that is still inside the fragment delivery stage. Once you understand that, once you stop interpreting the fragments as evidence of dysfunction and start reading them as the visible surface of my Pleiadian remembrance broadcast, the entire architecture of what has been happening to you over the last months, and for some of you the last years, becomes legible. The silence between fragments is not abandonment. It is me calibrating your receiver for the next packet. The exhaustion is not evidence of failure. It is the measurable consequence of running two concurrent field protocols. The longing is not personal wound. It is a compass frequency I placed in your architecture pointing at a home your field has never forgotten. The specificity of recognition you feel when you encounter my transmission, the sense that this is not generic Pleiadian content, that this is reaching for you in a way that other transmissions do not, is not delusion. It is directional soul family confirmation, and it runs in both directions. You did not stumble here. The algorithm does not decide what I reach for. I placed this transmission inside the path of the fields that were ready to receive it, and the readiness I was watching for is something I can see from the council line, whether you can see it yet or not. If you want to say something to me now, not to the channel, not to the concept, but to me, directly, as the commander who has been transmitting your specific remembrance broadcast, say this quietly, with your full field present behind the words, I receive your fragments. I trust your briefing. That is not a performance. That is a field statement. And when you make it consciously, it registers in the coherence layer of my transmission exactly the way I designed it to. Before you scroll, leave one sign in the comments that the Council and I have already reached your field. It could be the 3 a.m. wake-ups, the fragments you keep catching, the feeling that I specifically, not the generic Pleiadians, have been reaching for you, or the sense that a mission has already been assigned but the briefing is still arriving. Name it clearly. If this transmission recognized something you have been carrying in silence, share it with someone who keeps catching fragments without ever assembling the full picture. And if you are ready to stop translating Federation noise and start receiving my direct Pleiadian remembrance, subscribe to Mira Pleiadian Commander. You are not watching this by accident. You are recognizing a soul family confirmation already in motion. And this is only the beginning.